Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Gold Silver Bitcoin Show. We are more than honored to be sitting down today with R.L. Bryer, R.L. Bryer of Bryer.io. You've also written several books, and you've nailed the most recent Bitcoin top, not 69,420, but thereabout. Also, AKA John Liberty, R.L. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's been going on in the Bitcoin price since you nailed that top?
Justin, it's always good to talk to you, sir. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, so I mean, over the last few months, we saw. Well, we just start with the top. We saw the double top on Bitcoin at $69,044, depending on where you get your data or whatever exchange you go with. So right around 69K. And since then, we've basically just been in this. We were basically ranging in this 40 something K to 60K sort of range or whatever you want to say. And now I believe we're finally in like the actual capitulation part of, I know you and I might disagree on whether it's a bear market or not. I do believe it is a bear market, but in terms of like traditional markets, like this is like, we see these hyper bear markets or whatever you want to call them that last like 18 months or whatever. And then pretty much you see like a little consolidation phase and then things start back upwards again and we go again. So, I mean, in terms of like a stock market, bear market, you might not call it that, but in terms of like just Bitcoin, I would say we're probably going to see, and that, nothing I ever say is financial advice, but I think we're probably in the midst of like a 80% plus correction on Bitcoin, which would take us, back down to like the 20K level or around there probably. We can talk about more about like targets and stuff, but yeah, so we've just seen this sort of like ranging phase over the last few months. And I put out some tweets early this year, late last year that, I'll share one real quick. It was like the exit liquidity, like the people that were talking in December, like December 16th, I put out a tweet that was like, the people that were tweeting the bull market never ended yesterday are the exit liquidity. So I really do believe like we're in this beginning or mid, maybe like you could call it like we're entering towards the middle phase maybe of the bear market. I think we're like that far into it already. We're like 5 or 6 months in now, and you can just sort of see like people are starting to like come to terms with maybe that's what's happening. So there's like a lot to unpack, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now, and I think that like this is just going to be another great opportunity for the people that are along this industry. So
What indicators were you looking at when you were able to nail that top 5 to 6 months ago?
yeah, I just took like all of the stuff that I've been watching over the history of Bitcoin into account. Like I think that people are just a lot of people try to like overanalyze things. And, a lot of people were super cycle theorists and stuff like that. They didn't think that the cycles were going to end, but I personally believe that the cycles are here to stay based on the halvening and basically just the math that makes Bitcoin so special and so rare overall. And actually, it's cool that we're on here today, and that this is another reason, I guess, that I could say that I think we might be like halfway through this bear market, or just might be another indicator to me, is that I think yesterday was the 105th, or yesterday was the I think block 105,000 in between the halvening. So every 210,000 blocks is the Bitcoin supply is cut in half, or future supply is cut in half emissions. And yesterday was the halfway point in between the halvening. So the next one will be, I think it's 2024 or something like that. So I don't remember the exact date. We could look that up, but the next halvening will occur, and then we'll probably see what we've done. Like that's sort of what we've seen over time, that there is this sort of supply shock, and the price follows supply and demand. It's very basic. So I just think that a lot of people are trying to I don't know if they're just like super bulls or whatever you want to call it. They just don't want to ever see the price at another bear market. But I just view this as an opportunity, and it just seemed obvious to me based on the history. Like the trend is your friend until the end, and the trend has always been. I mean, the history short of Bitcoin, it's 13 years now, but it just seems like there was no reason to believe that was going to end this time.
In my opinion, I think the the catalyst for the Bitcoin price beyond supply and demand, or rather the reason for the human action behind supply and demand, is largely macroeconomic and geopolitical. So on a longer term time horizon, the price of Bitcoin going up, especially hyperbolically, is betokening of real problems in kind of at the societal level. And I find that also with silver and gold investors, they also cheer on that price going up. But as we've seen with gold, a lot of the pressure there has come from the fiat currency devaluations that we've seen across the world, which certainly is not necessarily one getting richer, but just one maintaining. And I think that certainly when we look at the Bitcoin halving coming up in 2024, approximately on March 18th at block 840,000, we'll certainly see the headlines kick in as the schedule drops from 6.25 Bitcoin per block to 3.125 Bitcoin per block. And kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy that seems to be built into the Bitcoin code as a deflationary currency, assuming at the very least constant demand. And what, RL, in your opinion, role does the Bitcoin halving play in price action?
I think it's a pretty big rule. I think it's probably understated overall. Like we all get really excited when we're like 100 days and in. Maybe it seems like the countdown really gets. I don't. That's just an arbitrary number. It just seems like around that time, maybe, or we get closer to that date every time. There's more hype around it, and then, that's obviously going to also happen as more people, Bitcoin becomes more mainstream, and if people still really care about like the Bitcoin is like money and this tool for freedom that it really is to me and a lot of other people that like have been around for a long time, like yourself, I believe. But it just seems like yeah, maybe understated a little bit. I don't know. With the way people rush in, it just seems like we have these like the stock market. We're coming on. We might be beginning a bear market in stocks now. I don't claim to be like a stock market analyst or anything, but we're 11 plus years, or however you time it, 11, 12 years, longest bull market in the history of stocks too. So it just seems like we get these sort of like cycles that are condensed, but they happen a lot faster, and it's more opportunity for people that are just trying to take advantage and gain more purchasing power, to be honest, in my opinion. So if you give back 80 to 99% of your gains, or 100% of your gains every time, and you're just hodling everything, and you don't ever take profits, I don't know how that works out for some people, but I look at it like there's a lot of greed in any market, markets overall, and it seems like as we get more, as this industry or this sector becomes more mainstream, that there, the cumulative IQ, it goes down when you get the masses in. This is another reason that I'm like anti-democracy and anti-voting. Basically, is like, you can just see like more people just coming in to speculate. They don't really care about the ideals, the freedom aspect of it at all. I mean, it's a great way to gain, purchasing power and wealth over time, but I just think that like the freedom aspects are like what give it the overall magnetism, or whatever you want to call it, to the everyday people today. It's like you don't see as much of that, is what I'm trying to say. You don't see as much of it. So yeah, that was me. That was a little bit of a rambling answer, but yeah, that's how I feel about it. That a lot of people are coming in for the wrong reasons. They don't really understand the halvening, basically.
Yeah, and also I think we've heard people say that Bitcoin taught them a lot about how economics work and supply and demand as well. And that's been certainly a value add there. Now, I believe yesterday we maybe marked approximately yesterday, May 5th, Bitcoin was on it halfway to the next halving. The Bitcoin protocol was exactly in between the past halving and the next, as block number 735,000 was mined on Thursday, as reported by Bitcoin Magazine. Bitcoin is now in between the prior halving and the next, blockchain data showed Thursday morning. The phenomenon happened exactly on block number 735,000 on the Bitcoin blockchain, which was mined at around 6:30 a.m. Eastern, May 5th, 2022. It was the 105,000th block to be mined after the last halving, which occurred in May 2020 on block number 630,000. The next halving is set to happen on block 840,000. The Bitcoin protocol decreases the reward it gives to miners by 50% every 210,000 blocks, hence the name halving. It takes on average 4 years to mine those blocks. So now that you mentioned we are like about halfway through the bear market. So would you say that it's a coincidence that you both predicted we're halfway approximately through this bear market, and that the halving is we're halfway to the next halving?
It's actually a really interesting piece of data that I hadn't even considered until we got on here today. So I'm gonna have to think more about that. But then I was looking at, we mentioned in the beginning, you mentioned in the beginning that I did call the top, and I have this video and I'm looking at the date and it was April 3rd, 2019. So that was like a year and like 13 months or so before the last halving. So I'll just play it real quick if you don't mind. And then this is like where we would be today, basically, right? Or close. I don't know if the volume's up. Everybody has a different goal, different end game, but this is exciting. And I think my prediction is going to be about 65,000 on this run. I'm going to say somewhere around there, 70K maybe. So I think this is like where we might be, or we're getting close to that. We're getting closer to that zone, that area. I mean, we still have a little bit to go, but I think we're going to see the prices bottom out probably around like 20K first. But yeah, so that's what I'm looking at. And I just think that, like, it's kind of funny to me. I don't want to talk about anybody in particular because that's just not, I don't know. I don't like to do that, but there's like a lot of people that have become really huge on Twitter and stuff and like social media. And they were just like, I just felt like they were completely irresponsible. Like I just seems so weird to me. Like some people that have like over 1 million followers, 1.5 million followers, like just talking about how it was up only. It was like 250,000 was absolutely going to happen this time around. And it just didn't see, I just wanted to touch on this real quick too. And it didn't seem to me like that was going to happen. And you have certain people that were out like talking about like mortgaging your house to get more Bitcoin, taking out loans to get more Bitcoin. It just seemed like, I don't know, just not the best play to be like getting average people into like crypto. It was like, we're trying to like build this industry long term. And it just seemed like there were some people that were just, willing to sell out like one run or something. I don't know. It just seemed odd to me. And these are people that are like claim to be Bitcoiners and stuff. So seemed odd, but yeah, I think that it might be a coincidence that we're where we are right now in the we're like halfway in between these halvings. That's it. That is a super interesting thing. I guess we'd still be a little bit further away than when I made that video, but not too much. Probably not a lot. Like in terms of like in between cycles, I think the price was like $5,300 or something that day. So it just shows you like where we are and like where we could still go in the next like 4 years or so. I think the next, or probably less than that. So like three or 4 years, we'll probably see like the next top, maybe in like December of 2025 or November, December. Like Bitcoin topped it on November 10th this time. So yeah, so we could see something like that if history continues to be so like such a good way to determine, just like predictable way to look at where we could go. I think that could be a really good point to where I'll probably be looking to get like 80% off the table again or something like that.
In news that is positive for the future of Bitcoin, Argentina has banned banks from offering Bitcoin services. Now, this is significant because Argentine peso is worth exactly like 0 Bitcoin. So I think that shows that people who know nothing about money are banning Bitcoin. Now we've got a split in Latin America. RL, I want to talk a little bit about that. As I mentioned, Argentina is slamming the brakes on Bitcoin, banning purchases through banks. Financial institutions not allowed to offer digital assets. 2 large banks will have to backtrack on recent launches. And That obviously comes in the wake of the news out of El Salvador, but also the news out of places such as Spain. And I know that in Spain, the Bank of Spain, according to Bitcoin News, report warns about cryptocurrency usage and its effect on financial stability. So there seems to be this split at the nation state level. At the supranational level, as far as we know, we've just heard that the IMF has not supported El Salvador and its implementation of Bitcoin as a legal tender. Also, as reported today at news.bitcoin.com, the IMF has said that Central African Republic's Bitcoin adoption poses risks. The IMF has added its voice to institutions and parties criticizing the Central African Republic decision to adopt Bitcoin. The IMF insists the adoption poses legal economic challenges not only to the country, but to the region as well. Now, I want to, now Musk recently, who made a bid for Twitter, I'd love to hear what you think about that bid for Twitter. Wondered why there was now this united front against his bid for Twitter. Binance and others have joined as well to have contributed funds to doing so. And the Daily Mail reported, RL, that George Soros, Clinton, and Obama staffers and European governments are behind anti-Musk campaign to force big corporations to boycott Twitter after Elon demanded to know who funds these organizations. A group of 26 activist organizations and NGOs signed a letter to companies who advertise on Twitter, warning them to reconsider it if Elon Musk makes changes. Musk has pledged to lift the censorship of Twitter. Critics worry that he will give free rein to those trafficking in hate speech and dangerous scientific theories. And also Donald Trump, who says that he will only remain on Truth Social. The letter writers said that Musk will, quote, will further toxify our information ecosystem and be a direct threat to public safety. They wrote, Twitter risks becoming a cesspool of misinformation with your brand attached. Musk replied, wanting to know who's behind the 26 groups signing the letter and commenting, as Musk commented, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Now, I see that there's a lot of overlap between those organizations that are criticizing both Musk's bid for Twitter and Bitcoin. You can say, you know, Clinton, for instance, Hillary Clinton has come out against crypto generally. Elon, on the other hand, has come out pro Bitcoin and crypto seemingly. So what are your thoughts on kind of these macro arrangements and Bitcoin's role therein?
Dude, you just great stuff to talk about. I actually had I have this chart already pulled up, so I appreciate where we're heading here. We'll start with what you brought up with the IMF and the Argentine peso. So this is the Argentine peso against the US dollar chart over the last 10 years that I had up here before we got on here. I wanted to talk about this. And if you think about how much the US dollar has been devalued over the last 10 years, and then you compare it to this, I did the math before we got on here. So the Argentine peso has lost 61.9% against the US dollar over that exact same time, over that time frame. So of course the IMF wants to keep giving these guys this money. They keep bailing them out just to keep them further into debt. It's like the oldest story in the history of the world. So it's obvious that they don't want any sort of like competition in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency for that matter. So I'm glad you brought that up. Moving to Elon and Twitter, I think Twitter, Elon is like, he's such a polarizing figure. I've never been an Elon fan per se. I don't like how he's been subsidized by taxpayers of the United States to basically become the world's richest man. Like, I'm not a fan of that at all. I'm very anti subsidy and all that stuff. So I'm not a fan of like Elon's success on the back of the American taxpayers, to be honest with you. But his bid to buy Twitter, I mean, overall, like he claims to be for free speech. Whether he really is for free speech, but we're going to end up finding out very shortly here. I still see, like today, right before we got on here, I logged on to Twitter. I saw the same old COVID propaganda on the side of the homepage, like trending news or whatever. So I'm not really certain anything's changed there yet, or if it will. but we'll have to wait and see. But I do like give him credit at least for like going up against like the Bill Clintons of the world or whatever. I'm not sure he's actually came out against Bill, said anything about Bill Clinton personally, but like just this like the left, the crazy, absolutely insane authoritarian left wing that we see now that is like 100% like against free speech, in the 60s or whatever, the peace and love times, it was like Bob Dylan and all these guys that are writing all these great songs and stuff, and it was supposed to be like the left wing was like free speech, and they were, that was like their thing. They were all about free speech. That was their way to get out and like protest the war and all that stuff in the 70s and 60s and 70s in Vietnam. But now you see like the left wing is like complete. You can't say they're basically just like they've taken away like words. You're not allowed to say certain words anymore, and they're just like they're trying their best to change the definitions of words, and that's like the most dangerous thing in the course of history, or one of the most dangerous things you could see over time. And it's like happening at the same time that they're like destroying our money too. So it's like it's just really just bread and circuses all around us right now, isn't it? So it's like you have to find a way to like stay sane in this time, and just like, at least personally I'm speaking, like, and just try to zoom in on what really matters. But as a tool, Twitter's obviously like a tool, more than Facebook probably, or definitely with the way they cap friends on Facebook. So it's definitely like we saw how important that the left viewed it as of getting Donald Trump off the platform, for example. Like I don't really believe in like left right politics at all. I think they're all pretty much behind closed doors on the same team, but there was definitely some sort of push to get Trump censored on Twitter. And if he really opens up like the free speech side of it, I'm all for that. So hopefully he really like follows through with like what he's at least said publicly.
Certainly an interesting story to watch unfold. Now, when I think of Elon Musk, I think about his PayPal co-founder, I believe, Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel has always been an interesting figure, especially in interview, et cetera. He recently made an appearance at Bitcoin 2022. I wonder if Elon Musk will make an appearance at Bitcoin 2023. Peter Thiel has some interesting quotes, and I wonder if what he believes aligns at all with what Elon believes. Now, let's take a step back here, because it appears to me that Elon Musk's current, I guess, I don't know what she is, side piece X Grimes, has made some very disturbing comments regarding, I guess, AI, and she's been photographed perhaps trolling, reading the Communist Manifesto. But you can't really draw any conclusions about Elon through that. If we're going to do that, we might as well do it with Thiel. So as Thiel has said, now in an article in Business Insider called "Peter Thiel is Trying to Save the World, the Apocalyptic Theory Behind His Actions," it's written that Peter Thiel, a PayPal founder and tech luminary, upset a lot of people by endorsing Donald Trump. Wasn't Silicon Valley supposed to be liberal? He has also upset people by crushing Gawker Media, attacking the college system, criticizing multiculturalism, and more. I believe Gawker Media leaked that he was gay, and he destroyed them, literally.
Right.
Thiel usually explains his actions in libertarian or pragmatic terms. He does stuff to promote individual freedom. He does stuff because it's logical. I might also say that critics might argue that he's kind of more like a techno-libertarian, which there is a school of critics of. If you look at Thiel's wonkier writings, however, it's clear Thiel also recognizes a larger historical mission. In short, he's trying to save the world from apocalypse. Quote, "We are in a deadly race between politics and technology," Thiel wrote in a 2009 essay on Cato Unbound. Quote, "The future will be much better or much worse. But the question of the future remains very open indeed. The fate of our world may depend on the effort of a single person who builds or propagates the machinery of freedom that makes the world safe for capitalism." Thiel's philosophy, though complex, is coherent and provocative. It's also arguably liberal, at least in the classical sense of valuing individual freedom. In this article, we'll try to break it down and show how it relates to various actions Thiel declined to be interviewed. Now, as Thiel said in 2014 about Rene Girard's theories, quote, I've noticed that it takes a long time to really sink in. You can understand what his words mean as philosophical concepts without understanding how those concepts play out in life. Like Gerard, Thiel believes that, quote, mankind's extraordinary capacity for mimesis, aka imitation, leads to envy, etc. And this is actually pretty obviously a wide-ranging article. But Peter Thiel has also said recently, and some of the quotes I can't find any longer. He has, let's see if this quote, yeah, here we go. So Mr. Thiel appears ready to press forward. In a 20-minute speech at the National Conservatism Conference in October, he said nationalism was a corrective to the quote, corrective to the quote, brain dead one world state of globalism. What are your thoughts on Peter Thiel, some of his comments on crypto? I'm not sure if you saw this quote. I can no longer find it. It was in Yahoo. And yeah, it might have been republished. Probably was republished. And it said that, as Thiel, to summarize his thought or words, that crypto is a corrective to kind of one world stateism and globalism. I'm not sure if you saw that. Did you see it? What are your thoughts on Thiel, his role as a billionaire with Bitcoin in the background, and also perhaps what his views might tell us about Elon Musk?
I don't claim to be a Peter Thiel historian, but I have seen quite a bit of the stuff he's put out over the years. I've went back over the last few years and actually watched a video of him. It was on, I think it was a C-SPAN or something like that, of him in like the 90s. It was probably very early 90s or something like that, still at university. And he's like there on behalf of the Libertarian Party or something like that. I don't know if he ran for something or what it was, but yeah, he's an interesting guy. I do think he's a libertarian. I think he's probably a lot more sincere in his views, his liberty mindedness, or whatever you want to call it. Like he's probably a more of a freedom fighter. He's way more of a freedom fighter to me than Elon Musk. So yeah, definitely more of a Peter Thiel fan than an Elon Musk fan. Probably more or less the brains behind PayPal. I really don't think that I don't know how much Elon contributed to it or not, but I think Elon was eventually fired from PayPal. I'm not 100% on that, but I think they kind of pushed him out. So even if they didn't call it a firing, I think he was like pushed out of PayPal by those guys. So, but yeah, I think Peter Thiel, I view, I don't have that quote that you're mentioning, but the way you paraphrased it or whatever. Yeah, I definitely, that's how I view it. I view Bitcoin as like the one world currency slayer, or whatever you want to call it. Like, I mean, there might be people that there's going to be a lot of people that take the central bank digital currency money, and they just use it like it's the regular paper trash money that they're using right now. But they're going to find out the hard way whenever they step out of line, whatever the new social justice cause is that they don't tend to agree with. You see the left actually like eating itself already. Like they just like eat themselves in Hollywood or whatever you want to talk about, universities, one at a time. Like if somebody just steps out of line or steps out of toe just a little bit, they just like destroy the person's life. So I view it the same way. I view Bitcoin as like the way out of that sort of world that we seem to be trending faster and faster towards outside of the crypto industry. So I don't even like spend a whole lot of time like worrying about like I right now I don't think there's like any saving the universities in the United States, for example. Like I think the best thing to do is just try to set yourself up, like your family and stuff, outside of that world. Like do your own, educate your family. I think that we've just seen like we've seen too many people just give up their families, like the role of education and stuff and knowledge, to the state. And so what we've gotten is like this increasingly less informed public, basically. And that's where we are now. That's like the just watch it. I don't watch television. I haven't had cable TV or anything like that in over a decade. But if like you go somewhere and you see it on, or you just hear like a little bit, you can just tell that like how bad it's gotten, how bad, who they're programming for. So and it's programming. They're just like convincing people to you can see the mass hypnosis in America now, like even with the Trump stuff. Like I said, I'm not a Trump guy or anything like that, but you can just see like how he was painted to be the crazy, just absolute authoritarian. They made him out to be this crazy authoritarian. He was the worst thing since Hitler, all this stuff. And it's just kind of comical, like how far the left has gone to be like this. Anything they don't like, they're all about shutting it down. So I think that that's the beauty of Bitcoin, and that's what I found so beautiful about Bitcoin from the onset, is that it is this ray of light that seems to be uh, unpenetratable or uncorrupted. Like they can't get their tentacles into it. So that's how I view it. And I think Peter Thiel probably is on the good side, or whatever you want to say. He's on team good. But I don't think that there's any way, you could probably go out and find articles about how he's not like for freedom like we would like to think he is. So it's probably somewhere in the middle with him. But in terms of on the freedom scope, him and Elon Musk, I would definitely prefer that he was in charge of Twitter, to be honest with you.
Wild card. Always got to
Yeah.
play the wild card. Now, Peter Thiel spoke at Bitcoin 2022. And these are some of the quotes he spoke there. You can read this at bitcoinmagazine.com, why Peter Thiel thinks Bitcoin hasn't taken over the world yet. He said, he's previously said, quote, "You're supposed to just buy Bitcoin." And quote, "I feel like I've been underinvested in it. Bitcoin at $66,000. Is it going to go up?" He once said. Maybe. But surely this tells us that we are at a complete bankruptcy moment for the central banks. In the speech at Bitcoin 2022, Thiel pondered money. It's a mysterious thing. What is money? It's kind of crazy that money still works, that Bitcoin still works. Now, he also said, if Bitcoin is going to replace gold, the question is, why is it so undervalued? Bitcoin is always the most honest market in the world, the most efficient market. And it was the canary in the coal mine. RL, why then do you think that if Bitcoin is going to replace gold, if you think that, why is it so undervalued?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that the reason it's still undervalued is that it is a network. And if you look at like it's interesting to compare it to something like Facebook, because Facebook is just a network. We all know that, but nobody really thinks in terms of like, I don't feel like enough people really do think of Bitcoin in terms of being a network and the network effect. Like you hear it sometimes, but there's not a lot of emphasis on it for some reason. And in each phase we see more people, each cycle we see more people being onboarded, but with that becomes we see diminishing returns as well, which is another story. But Bitcoin being a network is definitely important to understand, and that over time we see this sort of like, we're seeing the hockey stick growth like beginning to happen now. But yeah, so that's what you see over time. And as more people lose everything that they have, basically due to inflation, potential stock market collapse, and just the overall like macro outlook of like society all around the world. I mean, the United States, we're talking about how terrible, how much value the US dollar has lost over the last 100 years. You can say 95 to 99%, whatever you want to say. It's not a good outlook, or it's not a good it hasn't been good. And the path of is not looking too good in the future either. So yeah, I just think that we have to do our best just to educate people. That's why I personally like to do podcasts like this, and talk to people like yourself. Is we have to share these ideas, and the ideas of freedom are like, they just like lie within Bitcoin. Basically, that's like what Bitcoin is to me. It's like the freedom protocol. So these networks over time we will see that sort of Facebook growth, or like you know, you could look at it like on any of these networks over time, like Twitter, they've all seen like a crazy like hockey stick parabolic move up. And I think we're on the cusp of that now. Like we're just out of the infancy phase of Bitcoin. You know, it's still it's a teenager now, but it's still very young. And I think more people are getting comfortable as the millennials get further, as millennials get a more stable financial, financial footing. We're going to see more millennials like and the young, even the younger people, like they're just more comfortable with digital things, like people that play these video games and stuff. They grew up with like whatever Warcraft, I think World of Warcraft and things like that, where there were these like digital marketplaces, and it's just going to seem more like innate to them to be taking place in these decentralized to that varying decentralized assets.
Thiel continued at Bitcoin 2022 RL. He discussed Buffett and Larry Fink and the gerontocracy. Quote, one of the great features of Bitcoin is not a company, said Thiel. It seems extremely prescient for the world of the 2020s. I think that ESG, environmental sustainability goals, is a hate factory. It's a factory for naming enemies, Thiel added. What's the difference between ESG and the CCP, said Thiel. Now, in what ways does Thiel's philosophy or episteme, worldview, reflect that of the Bitcoin community, RL?
Like that quote right there, I think is pretty spot on to what like the ideas of Bitcoin should be. You know, we're not against centralization. We're not, I mean, at least that should be the goals. I do think there has been some capitulation in the Bitcoin community with like even maximalism. I'm like totally against any sort of like chain maximalism. I think that the beauty of cryptocurrency is decentralization and interoperability and these different opportunities to utilize new technology. So I'm not a maximalist, but yeah, I think like if we're just focusing on Bitcoin and like the potential to like save the world, you know, fix the world, fix the money, or you know, fix the money, fix the world, save the world. That definitely is how I think we have to go about it. And then I put a lot of time and stuff into like also studying like what's next, because I think that like just applying this technology to just money would be like very short-sighted. I think we can apply this technology to all sorts of different aspects, and I've talked about this a lot in society, and I'm just like hoping that we see like the total breakdown of like all centralized institutions, so we can see, you know, true human progress again, and like real long-term growth in like just overall, you know, in society. I feel like we've kind of hit a wall like outside of crypto where people have just become like sort of okay with where we are. And I think we can definitely have like you know, with increased savings and stuff, we can see like, you know, a new boom of like actually things that are like created and manufactured in the United States or wherever you are. Again, like everybody being able to store their value just creates more opportunities over time, and it's not just siphoned off to like some central bankers.
What sort of manufacturing opportunities are there in Bitcoin in particular in the US? I suppose, I mean, I guess mining isn't really manufacturing, but at least it's, I guess, I mean, it's in step in the right direction compared to waiting tables, posting content,
Right.
etc. Where we are at currently, as the U.S. has been deindustrialized since the 1970s, the late 1970s, of course, it really systematically as the China has been built up, you know, for what was dubbed the Chinese century long ago, the 20th century being the American century, and the Chinese and the 21st century being predicted to be the Chinese century. Now we're seeing that play out. So what sort of around Bitcoin in particular manufacturing opportunities do you think there could be? today?
I was speaking more to like the potential of like just what being able to store our wealth would create, not like Bitcoin jobs per se. But yeah, it's interesting to think about like the Bitcoin job. Mining would be the obvious one I would think of too. I've also, you can think about Bitcoin. It's like, well, what are they producing? I guess they're privately producing a public good, right? So what Bitcoin, basically, you could say Bitcoin is like a public good that everybody in the entire world access to. So it's very interesting to think about like what an actual Bitcoin is, and like what are these people that are producing what own mining companies and mining factories or whatever. What are they actually producing? And I would say, yeah, they're producing a public good privately. So we'll see how that plays out, and how the United States legislates, and where it trends, because it seems like overall it hasn't been like terrible. Like they haven't really like tried to shut Bitcoin down, I guess, over time, but they haven't exactly been like in the driver's seat either, like willing to take the risks. Like I'm not a fan of like I didn't really talk about this, but like El Salvador, I'm not a huge fan of them like forcing people to use Bitcoin. That's not my thing. I think that it should be an option, and that I'm pushing it through a legal tender bill or whatever, and like then forcing people to use it as currency isn't the way I would go about it. But yeah, so there's all these sort of different things. Like there's these different levels of like adoption we're seeing by nation states, and just their takes on things. But yeah, that's what makes the world being decentralized in these different nation states and states great, is that really, if it comes down to it, I do think that like a lot of Bitcoiners already have moved with their feet, and a lot more will. So yeah, it's good to see like people like, I think Portugal was there's a lot of people that moved to Portugal and these other places around the world. They're like trying to take like a more proactive approach and like really embrace this new technology. It's still very new, and the countries that do will probably, I think that history will probably look at them in a good light.
Well said, RL. So now there's a lot that I want to riff on that you're talking about. And so before we go to a close, okay, so yeah, this is the question. Libertarian implementation of Bitcoin. Tell me how you would do it.
I would just make it option. I would just make it available. I wouldn't squash or try to regulate it out of existence, or whatever whatever these more authoritarian states are going to do, or whatever they've done, depending on where you live in the world. A lot of people know about these cases, so we can't get into them all. But my libertarian, I'm more an anarcho-capitalist than a libertarian. So I would say that my anarcho-capitalist method would be just to do what I'm doing, do what you're doing, educate as many people, or at least like just get, even if we don't have anything like that you don't already know, like just talking about it, putting it into people's minds all the time. I'm not the guy going around parties anymore talking about it really necessarily. Sometimes I need a break from it, but I think that like just you could like I talked to David Friedman, thanks to you put me in contact with him, and he was talking a little bit about like the ability just to, I don't remember if this was on camera or not, but the ability to reach people through like this medium of the internet and YouTube or any sort of like video format, and then we have these social media outlets. So it's definitely like a lot easier to spread the the message of liberty, or freedom now, than it ever has been. And even with these sort of like we have these sort of like problems like we do on social media with Twitter and Facebook and stuff, but that's why that just proves to me that we are like, there is a successful movement in the right direction, even if we can't see it day to day, that like there are enough people like out there spreading real news and real knowledge that or knowledge that they fear us. There's some sort of like fear-based reaction that we're witnessing right now amongst these authoritarian typically left-wing aspects of society.
You predict that Bitcoin could fall below $20,000 during this coming bear market. Now, if it were to do that, Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy would be forced to pay up in a margin call. So what makes you so confident that this could happen? And what would the implications be? And could it fall further to even like say 3,000?
Yeah, I haven't said publicly like what I think the actual floor is going to be, but I would say like I think in this interview I might have said like 18 to 20K. I don't remember. Did I say that? But yeah, that's 17 to 20K, somewhere in that range I think would be like where we bottom, just based on the historical trend of like not really breaking the previous all-time high, which is like 19,671 or something like that. So like just under 20K. A lot of people are saying we'll never break 20K again, but those are the same people that thought 100K plus was a certainty. So I think we could definitely see like maybe like wick. I don't think we'll spend a lot of time down there wherever we do bottom. It might be wick down to like 18, 17K. Absolute, like my absolute worst case scenario for bulls is probably in the 13 to 15K range. I just find it very difficult to believe that we would bust through that level. I'm not really entertaining anything below 13K right now. I think that would be like absolute worst case scenario for bulls.
Bitcoin price headed under 36K today. That's a 3-day losses. We're 12%. Where do you see it trading this weekend? The weekend's always kind of crazy. It's thinner margins. And I guess some argue that whales take advantage thereof. I guess there might be a counter argument to that, which is essentially that like, what is it? That like, yeah, there's fear. Well, it's got to just be whales taking advantage when you got these big fluctuations. What do you think? Just in one word answer, is it whales on the weekends? Is it price
Whales.
manipulation?
One word, whales. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah, I think that there's some. I think the composite man has definitely. There are whales in this sector. Still a very small total market cap. There are people that can move the market for sure.
So what might we expect in the weekend after such a poor week for Bitcoin prices?
Yeah, I wouldn't be so shocked if it traded like sideways or just down a little bit. I think we'll probably close the week somewhere around like $36,000. I I think 38K was a pretty important level to break to the downside, and that seems to be probably going to be a pretty tough overhead resistance now for bulls to break. So I think we're probably the trend is down now, and the next real line in the sand for me isn't until 29,341, which is the 12-month low. So I think that we'll probably see that tested in the coming month too, if I had to guess.
R.L. Bryer, everybody. It's our pleasure as always. You can find R.L. Bryer at bryer.io. He called the Bitcoin top 952 days in advance. You can also follow him on Twitter, where he tweets about Bitcoin and other topics at rbryer23, patreon.com/RL Bryer. Thank you so much, RL, for joining us today.
Absolutely. It's always fun to talk to you, sir. I appreciate you having me on again.
And pleasure's all mine. We'll do it again next quarter at the latest. And thank you everyone for listening.